Yes, good day, everyone, and welcome to Connect Your Audio. I am your host, David Gregors, and I have a jam packed show for you today, just overflowing with good content. Yesterday, the Stunning and Brave was a little high, apparently. We got a lot of just amazing comments, but mostly disagreeing with what I had to say. Apparently, a large number of you want to follow Lin Wood off the cliff. Go right ahead. I don't. But you're not going to take me with you, and you're not going to take the country with you if I have anything to do with it. But we have a jam-packed show today. I still love you guys. We're going to move on to the election again. I told you I didn't really want to talk about the election because things were going to change so fast that I wasn't sure that this podcast format is really good for it. But you hooked me in here, and now we're on it. So it's fine. We're gonna keep doing it. But I do have a couple of things I want to talk about. First of all, yesterday in the Georgia legislature, in front of a Senate committee, Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis, noticeably without Lin Wood and Sidney Powell because they are insane and have nothing to do with the case, the one that's actually going to win, if any of them are. They were in front of the Georgia legislature talking about why the election should be decertified, why they should not send the electors apparently chosen by the Georgia voters. They are alleging a large amount of fraud. They are alleging all kinds of bad acts and bad actors. I watched a great deal of this yesterday. So I wanted to go through some of this. So let's just start from the beginning. We have an article from Breitbart talking about this suitcase, right? So everybody is talking about this suitcase. So the story goes that in Fulton County, Georgia, which is Atlanta, basically, um, everything was going fine. Trump looked like he was leading all over the state, looked like he was going to win, and then somewhere around 10:30 at night, shenanigans started happening, and there was supposedly a pipe that burst somewhere. Poll watchers were sent home, told they wouldn't be doing any more counting in Fulton County, and the Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis were able to obtain this video that purports to be from that time period of when supposedly people were sent home and things happened. So what happened? Well, we had somebody named Jackie Pick who testified as to what happened on this video, and she says that it happened around 10:30 at the State Farm Arena after the counting had allegedly stopped when the observers and other workers were told to go home. Miss Pick said she witnessed 4 suitcases be pulled out from under the table. That occurred, quote, after the supervisor with the blonde braids told poll workers to leave. 4 people, including the woman with the braids who told the others to leave, stayed behind and continued counting votes, according to the allegation. So Miss Pick asks, so what are these ballots doing? They're separate from all the other ballots, and why are they only counting them whenever the place is cleared out with no witnesses? It's a good question. It's a legitimate question. Pick said the unobserved counting went on from 10:30 to about 1 a.m. The attorney alleged Miss Pick, who's not acting as an attorney, but she's called an attorney in this article. Miss Pick alleged the counting resumed only after Republican observers and members of the media left the room. Pick estimated the number of ballots tabulated after observers and the media left the room as beyond the margin of victory. That's an estimate, that's from her thing. But one thing is clear is that this, and she shows a video of where these suitcases are being pulled out. Um, you know, make of it what you will. For what it's worth, I just saw something earlier this morning where Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy, I follow him on Twitter, he says the video is fake. In fact, Lin Wood, I think, had made some reference to this earlier on, and the Democrats in the Senate said that the video had been debunked. This is a different video, apparently. They said they had just gotten a hold of it, I think, the night before the hearing, which would have been, I guess, Wednesday night. And so who knows? But because of this video, Brian Kemp, governor of Georgia, has asked or is pushing for now the full signature verification or some sort of signature verification. I don't know if he's talking about doing all the signatures on the mail-in or absentee ballots, or if he's only talking about a random sample, which is something that one of the legislators suggested to get a sense of how it was going. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, we're talking about somewhere around 11,000 votes that are needed. I think for Biden to, or for Trump to be able to overcome this, because really we're really talking about two separate issues here. Number one, was there suspicious actions taking place? Were there suspicious actions taking place? Yes, yes. The answer is very clearly yes. But would those suspicious activities, the second prong of this, change the outcome of the election? Now, I hear you guys. I hear you loud and clear. It's and I've said it before, and I will say it again. It is inexcusable that in the year 2020 we can't have an election that is 100% secure. It's ridiculous. I feel you on the idea that these systems can have backdoors with China. There's an awful lot of Chinese influence in our country. We just got out of election 4 years ago where we were talking about Russian influence. We know they try to do things sometimes. It's just the way things go. And I'm afraid our technology has made it easier for these bad acts to happen and bad actors to do their bad actions. So I feel you. I hear you on that. I understand. But the second prong is important. Is there enough evidence, or are there enough contested ballots to flip the election? And so you also have to ask if, for instance, for one thing, they're never going to figure out if this is true, they're never going to be able to figure out what exactly was in those suitcases. Were they ballots? Were they original ballots? Apparently they do some copying ballots. There's a lot of talk about that. The software is supposed to be able to account for when you make a copy of a ballot. If you were to make 5 copies of one ballot, it's supposed to account for that and still only count it as one ballot. I don't know. I don't know. But that's the problem, is that there's so much going on here we don't know. And so that's why I think these cases are actually good for our country, despite the dangers of having a state decide not to send the apparent winner's slate of electors to the electoral college. And it's wrought with danger for sure. So I was struck in this Georgia hearing about just this cavalier attitude towards the votes. I mean, it was my vote, and I feel like a lot of people out there are like this. When I go and vote, or if I get an absentee ballot and I mark it off and I put it in the envelope, I feel like I am doing something sacred. I feel like I am taking part in some sort of sacred ritual. And when I hear that, you've got stacks of ballots over here that look like they might have been copied, but nobody really can explain what they are, and you've got possibly some over here in a suitcase. You got people from the ACLU who haven't been trained or for some reason working at the polls. I mean, there's a lot of really cavalier attitudes towards this whole thing, and Secretary of State Raffensperger, I guess his name is, he seems equally cavalier about the whole thing, and it's upsetting. I understand. We'll get to the other side of the coin later in this show, but I get it. I do get it. So moving on from the Georgia election fiasco hearings yesterday. We also had a lot of talk from the Georgia State GOP senators talking about the need for an audit of the ballot signatures. We touched on this a little bit already. But there were 1.3 million absentee ballots cast in Georgia, and that's 5 times the amount from 2016. The rejection rate was, I think Rudy said something like 0.2% for the absentee ballots in 2020, whereas historically it had been up around 6%. So big disconnect. Is it possible that people through education, I mean, there were a lot of PSAs going on, Hollywood stars out there telling people taking their clothes off and telling people how to correctly do their ballot. Did those things work? It's entirely possible. We can't tell. We can't tell strictly from the rejection rate. So, is it fishy? Sure. Is it impossible? No. Maybe the I don't know, the signature equipment is better. Who knows? But it's not impossible. In a story from the Epoch Times, they say the state's election authorities have acknowledged that the increase has strained the county registrar staffers responsible for verifying that signatures on the ballot envelopes match those the government has on file for the voter. This is another thing, as I don't know how closely those things. Now, I rode an ambulance for 12 years. I'm used to, and it's something that happens when you do that. Is you get used to riding while bouncing up and down, going down the road. It's a whole different thing. And so my signature actually changes frequently. It doesn't change in great ways, but I mean, sometimes it's just like 2 lines, and sometimes it's like a squiggle, and sometimes I put the dot on the I, sometimes I don't. It's just, so I don't know how sensitive these things are to that sort of variation, but it's, again, something that's interesting to know. We don't see a lot of transparency here. What's going on is what I'm getting at. So, Senator Greg Dolezal, no relation, I assume, to Rachel Dolezal, asked why not look at the signatures and have a third party look at the signatures. And he asked that of Ryan Germany, General Counsel for Georgia Secretary of State's office. The Germany said, I don't think it's appropriate because we open our investigations based off of actionable complaints. And so in other words, there's no complaint that has been put in front of them saying that a signature did not match and was accepted anyway. Now, here's the problem. I don't know how you ever do that. I mean, unless you're talking about, it sounds like the county offices are having a hard time doing the verifications, so I don't know at what point the investigation is triggered. But he did say the office is looking at individual cases of issues with absentee ballots, but they haven't gotten to the signature verification part yet. Senator Steve Gooch noted that 1 in 4 of Georgia ballots were absentees and weren't verified by anyone except for the person at the registrar's office with little to no professional training. Again, another big problem. Where's the training? What is happening in Georgia? He asked, how can we certify this election this week knowing that 1/4 of the ballots haven't been verified by professionals or even audited? Great question. Germany, the Secretary of State General Counsel, said the law allows for this signature verification process so the election can be certified. He also said his office is looking into issues where voters apparently registered at invalid addresses. There was something like, 1,200, 1,400 that registered at UPS stores. You see that floating around out there. It becomes difficult because, as Mr. Germany here noted, it doesn't say P.O. Box. It looks like a regular address. I know, like mailboxes, etc., is what it used to be called. I think it's UPS store now, maybe. UPS store, you go and it's like 1000 Main Street, PMB 201. And so you get a street address and there's a little box number, or sometimes it's a suite number or something like that. Again, we're only talking about 1,400 votes. At least for UPS stores. I don't know about the rest of these. I've seen something going around where the actual street addresses of post offices were used, and that would, and that they were putting like suite numbers for the PO boxes instead of the actual PO box number. So I don't know. I don't know. It seems, again, it's enough to raise questions about what's going on in Georgia. And for the Trump campaign's part, they said under these conditions, the state's electors should be directly appointed by the legislature, not based on the election results. One of those dozens of allegations is that more than 30,000 absentee ballots were returned by voters but were not counted, according to an analysis expert, William Briggs, a statistician and former Cornell Medical School professor. And he based that on a phone survey of potentially affected voters by the team of former Trump campaign member Matt Brainerd. Uh, it's this is the sort of thing that people in the conservative Twitterverse are latching onto, and me as a lawyer just kind of looking at it. I want to be truthful to you people. I don't want to be telling you things you want to hear. The 30,000 absentee ballots that weren't returned by voters, or that were returned but were not counted. How do you get that from a phone survey of potentially affected people? I don't understand the method there. Also, the post office box thing, that's troubling. That's troubling. Sounds like that somebody didn't follow the law. But again, Team Trump is operating on the assumption that all of those somehow benefit Biden. Still doesn't meet the second prong. It's not going to give you enough if you just say, okay, well, the ones who have incorrect addresses, we're going to toss them out, and you assume. So I guess that's the question. How do you toss them out? How do you toss them out? I think about it. How do you do it? Because these things have already been counted. I guess you could go through and figure out who's voted for whom, but we don't know that information right now because nobody's looked at it. We're just assuming. We're just assuming that a lot of these are Biden voters. Maybe when all these things go through and they start lopping off some of these votes, maybe we'll find out. But for right now, it looks like there's a lot of questions. It looks like there's a lot of problems. And I don't know what the right answer is. So the case in Georgia is fairly strong, fairly. But if we lose this video, if the video gets debunked, I think it's significantly weaker. Just because I don't think you're going to knock out 10,000 people on signature verifications, but I could be wrong. Anything's possible. It's 2020, right? But I just want you to be realistic about what's happening here. And reiterate that like I said, when we talked about this the other day, when you're talking about a state that apparently goes for one person and you're asking the legislature to send electors for the other person, that is an extremely high burden that must be met. And I don't know that with Georgia we have it. I think we have it in Pennsylvania. I actually do think we have. I think there's enough flagrant disregard for the law in Pennsylvania that a court can basically say those electors are no good and either just don't send any, or the legislature can name their own. But I think it's probably more likely they just don't send any. So moving on to Nevada. We also had a hearing there yesterday, and this was actually an evidentiary hearing in front of a court. Apparently the first one of these that has been had, which is exciting. So the issue over there that came out was that the allegation is that USB drives had totals altered overnight. Jesse Benall, who was presenting evidence on behalf of the Trump campaign, had a witness whose name was being shielded by some sort of protective order. The witness testified that, quote, what they would do is they would log these disks in and out. It's good practice, and the disks had several numbers on them, and numerous times that disk would be logged out with one vote total on it and logged back in the next morning during the early vote period with a different number on it, sometimes more, sometimes less. What that means is that literally in the dead of night, votes were appearing and books were disappearing on these machines. Again, this is the first one of these evidentiary hearings that's been had. This is, I don't know, interesting testimony. interesting. I don't. Again, as when you look at these things, you want to know. You have testimony like that in the universe. Is there a possible reason that these things could happen? And again, these elections don't appear to be transparent enough that we can really know that at this point, if that's normal procedure. The Epoch Times goes on to say at the core of the election challenge in Nevada are several batches of ballots that the Trump campaign alleges were either cast, processed, or counted illegally, including roughly 40,000 voters who allegedly voted twice. Now, I caught on to this and I said, what do you mean? So we're talking about potentially, it says 40,000 voters who allegedly voted twice. We're talking about potentially 80,000 votes there. It's a secret ballot. We don't know who the two votes were for, but we think that 80,000 votes total could have been, well, correction, 40,000 of them could be illegal. But again, we don't know who they voted for. We don't know which ballot would be accepted. Would it be the first one? Would it be the second one? Are we talking about someone who mailed in their ballot and oopsie, I forgot, went and then went to their local precinct and voted? Who knows? But it sounds like they weren't keeping track of what was going on over there. The campaign is also arguing that the signatures on more than 130,000 ballots were verified solely by machine, a contravention of the Nevada election law. Again, that's a problem. If you have a legal procedure and you don't follow it, a statutory legal procedure, and you aren't following it, you have a problem. Does it amount to fraud? Does it amount to the vote total differences? I don't know. Goes on to say the campaign is asking the court to affirm the contest and strike the electors representing former Vice President Joe Biden, who are the defendants in the contest. Joe Biden's campaign said, well, let me go back. So Trump's campaign, his attorney said, quote, "We understand that this is an unusual situation, but what we can't do is turn a blind eye to vote fraud. This is true. If we were going to keep being the beacon of representative democracy in the world when it goes bad, and here it went bad, we can't just turn a blind eye to it. That's not what we do in America. We make it right." Okay, good point. Kevin Hamilton was the attorney for the Biden campaign, and he argued that the Trump campaign didn't name one single voter among the voluminous lists of ballots that were allegedly illegally cast. Quote, "Simply put, breathtaking relief demands breathtaking evidence, but the contestants stand before you with nothing of the sort." District Judge James Russell ordered both parties to submit proposed orders to the court by 10 a.m. on Friday so he can quickly make a ruling. That ruling should be coming forth, I would imagine, any time now. Well, the orders are supposed to be in at 10, so he's probably got to think about it a little bit more, but probably by the close of business today, I would imagine. So, again, you have another state where you have some things going on, and this one you have direct contravention of the law in terms of the machine verifications. It wasn't simply like Georgia where they just were having a hard time catching up. They certified even though they were having a hard time catching up with the signatures. You can say that maybe they shouldn't have certified, but they didn't. They are attempting to comply with the law, apparently, to verify these signatures on the ballots, whereas Nevada, they just went through and verified them with only the machine, these 130,000 signatures. So that's a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot here. So where do we stand right now? I have a tweet that I saw this morning. Let me pull it up here for you guys. This is from Kevin McCullough at KMC Radio. He says, "Good Friday morning. We have not found a president-elect yet, but do you know how many bad votes we found?" And I'm reading this to you because this is what's floating around. Pennsylvania, they've supposedly found 600,000, and they only needed 60,000. Georgia, they found 120 to 330, where they only needed 14. Michigan, 400,000, where they only needed 149,000. Wisconsin, 200,000, they only need 20,000. Nevada, they need 40 to 110,000, or they have 40 to 110,000. They only need 36. And Arizona, 400,000, they need 11,000. this is part of what's going on the internet. This is the sort of thing that's floating around. Um, as I mentioned, there's an awful lot of fake news going around about this. There's an awful lot of stuff that's being picked and cherry picked out of Lin Wood and Sidney Powell's lawsuits and sort of being imputed onto the Trump campaign. Uh, really, really, and truly, these people are not doing a service to what is going on. In fact, they're doing a great disservice to the Trump campaign, to President Trump himself. I would encourage everyone to let the Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, again, let this track play out. That's really the only thing that is going to change what happens on January 20th, is the Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis track, the official Trump campaign track. Sidney Powell's not going to change it. Lin Wood's not going to change it. All right? We have so much to talk about today, but we're going to keep pushing forward. I'm going to come back to this later on. But for today's quick take, is that what I'm calling it? Quick take, yeah. I just want to point out, the other day we talked about John Brennan being a terrible person. I think you can add Mitt Romney to that list. I don't think that Mitt Romney is a necessarily terrible person. I think he's probably a good person, but I think he is so weak that it ends up making him be a terrible person. We hear about, he's so moral and he's clean as the driven snow and all of this stuff. Very, very driven by his religious convictions and all that. He follows his moral compass, but it's striking to me how often his moral compass seems to point against what his team, his Republican Party people, the people who vote for him, how often those interests seem to point against what Mitt Romney is doing. So, he's got to come out. Pierre Delecto here, he's just got to come out and every once in a while remind everyone why he should never be trusted. And Donald Trump, he comes out to talk about Donald Trump. He goes on CNN. Wolf Blitzer asks him, how much damage is President Trump doing to our country, to our standing around the world, by refusing to concede and alleging widespread fraud going on all over the country? And Romney says, well, the Attorney General has said there's no there there. The courts have all looked at the evidence and said there's no evidence there, which is not true. Now, of course, there will be circumstances where one or two or a handful, maybe even 100 ballots were incorrectly sent in or counted, and those things get adjusted and fixed. But the idea of widespread fraud has simply not been shown to us, and if that evidence does exist, please show it to us. At this stage, we don't see it, so for the president or anyone else to go out and allege widespread fraud and say the election is rigged and the election was stolen, that obviously strikes at the very foundation of democracy here and around the world for that matter. People watch America, and if we can't have a free and fair election, how can they have it in other nations in the world? This is critical for the whole cause of democracy. Russia and China have to be laughing, smiling from ear to ear. This is critical for the preservation of the very democracy and freedom that's important for our country and others. And, of course, Romney was one of the first ones to start calling Biden president-elect. This is on brand for Mitt Romney. This is not his moral conviction that's doing this. Okay, I'm a pretty fair-minded guy, and I've tried to look at these stories from as right down the middle as I possibly can, using my lawyer brain, my attorney brain. I used to work for a judge, so I typically start from looking at things right down the middle, taking no sides. Taking no sides, I see many, many issues of which there is substantial evidence. I see many, many issues. I'm telling you all right now where they are. They're in Pennsylvania. They're in Georgia. Some questions in Nevada. Michigan, it was a weaker case. I haven't seen a whole lot going on in Wisconsin yet, but it seems fairly weak so far. Arizona, there seems to be something there, but so far, the strongest cases are Pennsylvania and Georgia. They are still highly unlikely to succeed because, yes, there was probably fraud. Yes, it was enough to overcome the election. But I don't know how anyone is going to. I just don't know that anyone's going to have the courage to overturn the election, the apparent will of the people. It would just, to me, it would seem like suicide. But this isn't what Romney's concerned about here, okay? Romney is not concerned about that. Romney has had it out for Donald Trump for God knows how long, probably since the 2015. So just, we'll get to that in a second, but here's another example of Romney just being a peach. Wolf Blitzer in the same interview yesterday on the coronavirus. It was the single deadliest day of the pandemic. More than 2,800 Americans were reported dead just yesterday alone. More than 100,000 people are hospitalized across the country. The CDC director says the next 3 months will be, in his words, the most difficult time in public health history of this nation. So here's the question, Senator. Finally, where is the president? Where is the president's leadership? He's obsessed with everything else. Why not this? First of all, Mitt Romney should have laughed this question off the screen, but Mitt Romney is a coward. Mitt Romney is a coward. He doesn't have the strength to stand up to Wolf Blitzer because Wolf Blitzer might say something mean to him. So Romney says, well, when asked where's the president's leadership, this hasn't been the focus of his rhetoric, apparently, and I think it's a great human tragedy without question. The extraordinary loss of life is heartbreaking and in some respects unnecessary. Not in all respects, but we've relaxed our standards as individuals. Some states haven't even had mask mandates, and from Washington, we've not had a constant, consistent plan and plea for the people to wear masks, to social distance, to take all the measures that would reduce the spread of the disease. It's unfortunate that this has become a political issue. It's not political. It's the public health, and unfortunately we have not made the message clear enough to the American people, and people are dying because of it. He is parroting. This could have been given at a Joe Biden speech, okay? This is who Romney is. I mean, this is where his heart is. This is who he is. He's showing you his character. We should have believed it all along, but. And this is why I understand Republicans being pissed off, or the MAGA Republicans, which is threatening to become a splinter group. Those Republicans are pissed off with the mainstream Republicans because mainstream Republicans said in 2012, Mitt Romney, it's your turn, even though the signature issue that year was Obamacare and Romney designed it. This is why people are pissed off. This right here. People are tired of it. I'm tired of it, people. Okay? I'm tired of it as well. If I never heard another word from Mitt Romney, I would be happy. So, just a flashback. Why does Mitt Romney do it? Well, he does it for this reason. Just after, of course, he was the only Republican who voted to convict President Trump in the impeachment hearings. So that earned him like permanent praise in the left's eyes. He was just perfect at that point, even though just a few years ago they were saying he was going to put black people back in chains. All is forgotten. All is well. He is one of us now. And look at this puff piece here. This is from someone named Charlie Mullins Glenn, writing in the Salt Lake Tribune. And Charlie Mullins Glenn is a writer, a teacher, and guess what? A community organizer. She founded Mormon Women for Ethical Government and served as its executive director until 2019. So she writes this just fawning piece after Romney voted to convict Trump. Actually, it's much more recent than that. It looks like, but it seems to be more contemporaneous with the vote for impeachment. But anyway, it looks like it's been updated recently, and I can't really tell. So don't quote me on that. But the article is called "Romney Brings Some Welcome Honor Back to the Senate." And she goes into this long sort of explanation of a play, the play The Man for All Seasons, and compares Romney to that. And She asks, "Where are the honorable statesmen and stateswomen today who refuse to forsake their own conscience, no matter the price, and who honor the oaths that they have taken as though they are holding their own selves in their own hands like water? Though seemingly as endangered as snow leopards, a few can still be found. Utahns are fortunate enough to have one of them serving as their junior senator." This is talking about Mitt Romney. She quotes an Atlantic story that says, in the 9 years I've been covering Romney, I've never seen him quite so liberated since being, free to be a thorn in everyone's side. He's unconstrained by consultants. He's unconcerned about re-election. He is thinking about things such as legacy and the grand sweep of history. Okay, this is not a person who is disinterested in how the world sees. I mean, you're saying he's concerned about his legacy. He's concerned about how history sees him. This is not your honorable man who puts conscience and morality right, whatever. You're saying it right here. He's putting his legacy first. He's putting the grand sweep of history, whatever the hell that means, first. He's not some moral leader. He is just like everyone else. And what they're saying is he's at the point of his career where he's got more days behind him than he does in front of him. So he's starting to look back, and now his actions are going to be for him to cement his place in history. So, goes on to justify Romney voting for conviction of Trump in the impeachment trial, and it's not often we see this kind of moral courage in the political arena. And for those naysayers who point to his voting record and cry, but, may I remind you that Romney is a true conservative. Like hell he is. Like hell he is. His signature thing, the thing that he is known for, is being the grandfather of Obamacare. And as I recall, I'm old enough to remember when Obama ate his lunch over that. The Republicans, Tim Pawlenty and all these other people in 2012 were too afraid to hit him with it. Hit him that hard, but Obama ate his lunch over it, and he could not get around that. You know why? Because it's not honest. He tried. Oh, but he's honest, right? No. He tried to get around it. Didn't work. Because it's a lie. Romney was lying. It is the same thing. His only way of getting out of it was to say that it wasn't meant to go nationwide. But what the hell difference does it make if it's in your state or nationwide? Nationwide just seems to dilute the market a little bit and maybe help bring down prices. It would seem to be way more expensive to force it in Massachusetts as governor. So let me get you to where we are now. So Mitt Romney believed with all of his heart that he should have beaten Obama, and he absolutely should have. Obama was a weak incumbent. Despite what the legend of Obama is now saying, Obama was a weak incumbent. He had approval ratings below 50%. He had massive spending. He was not ending wars. In fact, the wars in the Middle East were increasing. He was drone striking everyone who moved the wrong way or looked at the sky the wrong way. He was not a strong incumbent. Romney should have beaten him. He didn't. He lost. So Romney, there's always been the sense that Romney was jealous of Trump for winning, because here's something that people forget. In 2015, Romney was actually thinking about doing it again, about running for president again, and he decided against it. And Trump got in and ended up winning. And all the way up until the end, even when the Access Hollywood tape came out and everybody was thinking, well, maybe we're going to have to replace Trump at the top of the ticket, there was still talk that Romney might get in as part of the Never Trump coalition. I mean, he did some really, really terrible things. It was very obvious he wanted to run for president, and I don't know if his wife wouldn't let him or what. But, Mitt Romney according to NPR, spent nearly 20 minutes at one meeting ripping into the controversial real estate magnate, talking about Trump, saying he was playing the American people for suckers. Called him a crook. Called him a phony. Called him a fraud. So Romney just, as soon as Trump won, Romney decided that, yeah, maybe this Trump guy's not so bad. In fact, he was quoted as saying, Trump won the general election and he continues to win, continues with a message of inclusion and bringing people together. And his vision is something which obviously connected with the American people in a very powerful way. And what I've seen through these discussions I've had with President-elect Trump, as well as what we've seen in his speech the night of his victory, as well as people he selected as part of his transition, all of those things combined give me the increasing hope that President-elect Trump is the very man who can lead us to that better future. I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. You know what he was doing? He was campaigning for Secretary of State. Mitt Romney wanted to be Secretary of State. He wanted it like nobody's business. So you have these people saying, well, they're just going to steal it, so we're just not going to vote. I mean, unless you can show me that my vote is secure, I'm just not going to vote. That's ridiculous too. Do you want to know why? Because it's better to lose a fraudulent election than to let them win it fair and square. Because if you lose a fraudulent election, then you've got a cause of action. I explained this yesterday. You can do something about it. If you let them win fair and square, you can't do a thing about it, and you've lost whatever chance you have to get recourse. It's like, for instance, if a guy breaks into your house and he steals $1,000 from you, you call the police, you tell them, hey, this guy broke into my house, this is what he looks like, whatever. The police fill out a report and they never really do anything about it. So you get mad with the police, they don't do anything, what's the point, blah, blah, blah. Well, a few weeks later, you look out your window and you see the guy is outside casing your house again, he's going to break in. So what do you do? What do? You call the police, you tell them, hey, look, remember that police report I just filed? He's here again, come get him. That is what the people who are saying to vote are saying to you, Georgia. The people who are telling you not to vote are people who are telling you, you see that van out there casing the street, don't call the cops. In fact, just go out there and give him another $1,000. Maybe he'll leave you alone. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Yet and still, we have people just throwing people under the bus. Newt Gingrich is getting dragged. Ted Cruz is getting dragged. Dan Crenshaw is getting dragged. Come on. Come on. All for your golden calf, Lin Wood. I like Lin Wood. I'm glad that he did the Covington thing. But in this thing, right now, he's becoming harmful. He is marching us off the cliff. And I'm going to tell you something I've said probably 10 times now on Twitter and to other people around. If you have Lin Wood, who has this long history of donating to Democrats, and he tells you do not vote, he deserves the strictest of scrutiny. And I'll give you a hint. Anyone who's telling you not to vote deserves strict scrutiny. I'm not talking about people who are saying, well, vote for this guy or vote against that guy. I'm talking about people who are telling you straight up, do not vote. It's worth exploring if that person has your best interests in mind. Period. The end. So I'm going to talk about this every single day. Every single day until that runoff, if I have to. I'll do it 7 days a week if I have to. I'm going to do whatever I can. I am from Georgia. I love Georgia. I hate what has happened to Georgia. I hate that Georgia has sold its soul to Hollywood. I hate that it's turning more blue. I hate that it's losing its identity. But the last thing I want to see anyone do is roll over and let John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock represent Georgia in the U.S. Senate. For one thing, you're never going to get rid of Ossoff. Warnock, maybe not, but Ossoff's like 7 years old or something. He's going to be there until the year 2351. That is until he decides to run for president, because the guy obviously thinks he's entitled to these things. So, good luck, guys. I mean, I'm not going to follow you off Lin Wood's cliff. I'm just not going to. Ted Cruz is right. Newt Gingrich is right. Dan Crenshaw is right. They're not protecting their buddies. They're not. They're telling you what you already know, and that is that it would be insane. It would be a terrible, terrible tragedy if Chuck Schumer were back as the majority leader. It would be a terrible tragedy if Democrats controlled the White House, the House of Representatives, and the U.S. Senate. It would be a terrible, terrible tragedy that none of us want to see, no matter how bad these poor-mouthed cowards on Twitter and everywhere else say they do want to see it. Okay? So, that's where I'm going to leave it today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode a little bit better, but I'm not going to back off on this. I'm not going to back off on this. So, If you don't like it, I'm sorry. You don't have to tell your friends. You don't have to like. But if you did, like, share, subscribe, find me wherever I am. It looks like we are on everything now. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Acast, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, Deezer, Breaker, Stitcher, everywhere. I'm putting these things on YouTube every day now. It's just good stuff. We're growing in leaps and bounds. And I'm not going to stop challenging you people. I'm not going to stop challenging you people. We've got to hang together. And if you guys want to splinter off, that's fine. That's fine. But I'm not going to follow you off the cliff. We have a country to protect. We are a nation of laws, and I'm not going to follow you off. So, with that being said, by the way, before I go, I am planning to do a weekend repose tomorrow. I don't know yet what it's going to be. I'm thinking about it. But this has been a really busy week, and I've ended up talking about a lot of things that I had not intended to talk about. But I do think it's important to try to put on a topic that's going to be a little bit lighter. And I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about simulation theory. Simulation theory. That seems like a good light topic. The lightest of the light. You may not exist. So yeah, maybe we'll do that. So anyway, thank you all for listening. I do appreciate it. I would ask you to tell your friends about us. We're all over the place, as I mentioned. Just let everybody know what we're doing here, and I appreciate every single one of you. Until next time, good luck, be well, be safe, and God bless.